You are absolutely not going to believe the nuclear meltdown that followed when the queen of our HOA, President Prudence Featherstone, got served with the legal documents. She tried to fine me, tow my property, and effectively ban me from enjoying my own backyard. Her claim? My boat violated the HOA's aesthetic guidelines. My simple, devastating reply? Prudence, you have zero jurisdiction here. The lake you're trying to police? I own all 40 acres of it, legally, completely, and exclusively. And that means you, your board, and your petty rules are all trespassing. This is the story of how a harmless fishing boat turned into a legal war, and how I took back not just my boat, but the entire ridiculous HOA. All right, real talk, people. The pure entitlement in this story is off the charts. If you have ever dealt with a controlling neighbor or a power-mad HOA, you know what time it is. Stop what you're doing right now. Smash that like button until your finger hurts, and hit subscribe with the notification bell. We dive deep into the drama, the documents, and the devastating downfall of property tyrants. Let's get into the lake war. Our story begins in the meticulously manicured planned community of Lakeside Vista. Ironically named because the only thing Vista about it was the pristine glacier-fed water body at its center, Lake Serenity. My name is Alex, and I was the owner of the house on Lot 1, the largest plot tucked right into the bend of the lake, giving me arguably the best view and the longest stretch of waterfront. When I bought the property 5 years ago, the deeds were complicated. My main objective was peace and privacy, and the existing documents indicated a massive 40-acre parcel of land that included the lake itself. It was a quirk of the original developer who had carved out the lake bed and water rights as a single, separate entity and then sold it along with the largest homesite mine. I paid a premium for the extra land and water rights, signed the documents, and promptly forgot about the legalese, settling into life. The lake was for swimming for my dog and for my simple 14-foot aluminum fishing boat, the SS Minnow, which was always moored discreetly at my private dock. Life was great, until Prudence Featherstone was elected HOA president. Prudence had an uncanny ability to confuse rules with her personal taste and HOA bylaws with divine mandate. She started small, sending me a friendly reminder about the height of my mailbox post. Then, a stern letter about the unapproved shade of beige I painted my shed. I ignored them all, tossing the brightly colored envelopes into the recycling, maintaining my general peace. But then came the fateful letter, dated April 1st, and I assure you, it was no joke. It was titled, in bold all caps lettering, Official Notice of Violation. Unapproved watercraft. The letter claimed that the SS Minnow, which had been sitting there for 5 years, was a blight upon the shared aesthetic, and demanded its immediate removal, threatening a daily fine of $50 if it wasn't gone within 7 days. The reason, she stated, was that all watercraft must be stored out of sight, and this community reserves the right to maintain a consistent nautical appearance on shared waterways. That last phrase, shared waterways, would turn out to be the one word Prudence truly regretted ever writing. I was annoyed, but not yet angry. I simply pulled out the thick stack of closing documents, planning to fire back a polite but firm letter referencing the community's established history and the lack of specific watercraft rules for private docks. But as I flipped through the old brittle parchment, I paused, staring at the property diagram and the corresponding deed description. The original developer's survey clearly showed the lot lines extending not just to the shoreline, but encompassing the entire aquatic area, marked in heavy black ink as a PN 45001A lake tract, which was specifically included in my Lot 1 purchase. Little line of text, easily missed, confirmed it. Exclusive ownership, control, and maintenance of Lake Serenity, APN 45001A, lake tract, conveyed in perpetuity to Lot 1 owner. My boat wasn't on shared waterways. My boat was on my private, legally owned lake. This wasn't just a minor rule dispute anymore. This was a tactical opportunity. The fight had just escalated from a mere squabble over an aluminum boat to a checkmate against the entire Haas Foundation. I decided not to respond to the violation yet. I wanted to see how far Prudence would push this, and I had a sneaking suspicion she was about to go full nuclear, playing right into my patiently waiting hands. Prudence Featherstone, as expected, was not one for patience. Day 8, the fines started accruing. Day 10, I received a certified letter with a preliminary lien notice, threatening to attach a lien to my house for the now substantial and entirely fictional fines. But the true escalation came on day 14. I woke up that morning to the sound of diesel engines and loud, officious voices outside. I looked out my window and felt my blood run cold with sheer incandescent rage. Prudence, in a floral sun hat and sunglasses, was standing at the edge of my property, directing a professional towing company. They had brought a flatbed truck and an enormous, articulated crane. The tow company, likely hired under questionable circumstances and an even more questionable contract, was attempting to physically lift my fishing boat, the SS Minnow, off my private dock. I stormed outside, still in my pajamas, shouting, "What in God's name do you think you're doing? That is private property. Get off my dock now." Prudence smiled, the coldest, most self-satisfied smile I have ever witnessed. "Good morning, Alex. I'm merely exercising the HOA's right to abatement of a persistent, uncorrected violation. You see, since the boat is technically on the water, and the water is a common area for the community, it falls under our jurisdiction. The fine total is now $700, and you will be billed separately for the removal and storage of this unsightly vessel. I suggest you contact the HOA office to arrange for its immediate retrieval after paying all outstanding fees and penalties." The tow driver, looking increasingly uncomfortable, was already attaching the crane's harness to the SS Minnow. It was an unbelievable, illegal, and frankly, criminal act of trespassing and theft of private property, all based on a delusional interpretation of a non-existent rule. I knew then that any appeal to reason, any polite legal letter, was pointless. This was a war of wills, and Prudence had just deployed heavy artillery. I felt the sharp sting of injustice, the utter helplessness of watching someone with a tiny bit of power abuse it flagrantly. Whipped out my phone and started recording the entire interaction, capturing Prudence's smug face and the tow truck lifting my little boat skyward. "This is illegal, Prudence. You have committed theft and trespassing. You'll regret this," I yelled, knowing my words were falling on deaf, entitled ears. As the tow truck rumbled away with the SS Minnow dangling precariously, Prudence just offered a perfectly coiffed shrug. "See you at the next meeting, Alex. Try to be less dramatic next time." The whole interaction left me shaking with fury. Not only had she stolen my boat, but she had publicly humiliated me and essentially wiped her designer shoes on my property rights. The HOA office later sent me an invoice for $1,200 for the abatement service, along with a legal threat to file the lien immediately if the full fine and removal costs were not paid within 48 hours. I was effectively being extorted to get my own property back, and all because one woman believed her authority extended over everything she could see. My hands were tied, my blood pressure was through the roof, and for the first time in this absurd conflict, I felt truly defeated and hopeless. Watching the sun set over the empty stretch of water where my boat once sat, leaving me with nothing but the video evidence and a plan for complete, systemic, and total revenge. Defeat was a momentary pause, not a final state. The hopelessness turned instantly into cold, calculated determination. I spent the next 48 hours not contacting the HOA, but contacting the absolute best real estate litigation attorney in the state. I walked into his office with the HOA's threat, the $1,200 invoice, the video of the theft, and, most importantly, the original, unambiguous property deed and survey map showing the entire lake as part of my property. Attorney Marcus Thorne, a man whose resting face was one of polite skepticism, only needed 5 minutes to review the documents before his eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. He leaned back in his leather chair, a slow, confident smile spreading across his face. "Alex," he said, tapping the survey map, "this isn't just about a boat. This is about total control. They committed trespass. Conversion, that's legal speak for theft and defamation of title. But here's the kicker. If you own the lake, they have zero legal right to be in the lake, on the lake, or over the lake, ever, unless you give them permission. This is what we call a surgical strike. Our strategy was simple, devastating, and immediate. We didn't send a cease and desist. We didn't send a fine payment. We sent two things via certified mail and a professional process server, delivered simultaneously to Prudence Featherstone's home and the HOA's registered agent. The first document was a petition for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction, immediately freezing all HOA funds pending a hearing on the illegal conversion of my property and the fraudulent liens. The second document was the real killer, a formal notice of trespass and revocation of implied easement. This document stated in no uncertain terms that since the HOA had claimed jurisdiction over my private property, the lake, and illegally converted my assets, I was immediately revoking any and all implied or informal permission for anyone in the community to use the lake for any purpose. Swimming, canoeing, fishing, or even just walking to the shoreline all were now illegal trespasses onto my privately owned land. The community beach access, which sat right on the curve of my lake, was now officially closed, and anyone entering the water would be reported to local law enforcement. When Prudence received the documents, the reported reaction was pure, unadulterated shock. The hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for the following week, but the trespass notice took immediate effect. Within 24 hours, the HOA was forced to send out an emergency, humiliating all-caps email to the entire community. Immediate cessation of all lake activities due to pending litigation. The lake is temporarily closed. That temporary closure, backed by the undeniable legal reality of my deed, was the first crushing victory. The community's outrage was immediate, deafening, and aimed entirely at the board, and specifically at Prudence. She tried to backtrack, offering to return the boat and waive the fine, but it was too late. I had my documents, I had my lawyer, and I had the moral high ground. Ready to leverage my ownership of the entire damn lake to permanently dismantle her power structure? The HOA meeting that followed the lake closure was not a meeting, it was a public execution. Hundreds of furious homeowners, now unable to enjoy the community's primary amenity, descended upon the clubhouse, demanding answers and, more importantly, demanding heads. Prudence, sweating, and visibly crumbling, tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding with Alex regarding a small fishing vessel. That's when Attorney Thorne, having arrived with me, walked to the front of the room. He didn't speak long. He simply projected the original property survey onto the wall, highlighting the thick black line that encircled the entire lake bed, all 40 acres of it, and pointing to the text: exclusive ownership, control, and maintenance of Lake Serenity, conveyed in perpetuity to Lot 1 owner. He then held up the documents showing Prudence's order to tow my boat, his voice cold and commanding. Your HOA president, in a fit of overreach and personal pique, authorized the illegal trespass and conversion of my client's private property. She and this board acted fraudulently, and as a direct result, the owner of the lake has revoked all public access. The lake is private, it is his, and you can only swim in it if he personally invites you. Any fines levied against Mr. Alex are now being countersued as an attempt at extortion. And as for your president, the immediate payback is this. Mr. Alex is filing for a 6-figure sum to cover the cost of the theft, the legal fees, and the emotional distress caused by Prudence Featherstone's illegal actions. She single-handedly cost you your lake. The room erupted. The payback was swift and brutal. Within hours, 3 board members resigned, distancing themselves from Prudence's actions. The next morning, Prudence herself submitted a tear-stained letter of immediate resignation, effective immediately. The humiliation wasn't just losing her title. It was the public shaming by hundreds of neighbors who now saw her as the direct cause of their loss of the lake. The fines she tried to levy against me were not only canceled, but the HOA was forced to write me a check covering a $1,200 towing fee, which I happily accepted and immediately put into a fund for a new, larger, more defiant boat. Her ultimate humiliation came 3 days later when the local newspaper ran a front-page story under the headline, "Petty HOA President Loses Community's Entire Lake Over Fishing Boat Dispute." The fallout for Prudence was complete and immediate. The only thing sweeter than watching her reign collapse was knowing she was the new pariah of Lakeside Vista, a title she would never shake off. The long-term aftermath was the true victory lap. The entire community was in chaos. The HOA was rudderless, the lake was empty, and property values started to dip because the main amenity was gone. The board, now desperate, sent a delegation to me, pleading. They offered to pay all my legal fees and write an official public apology, just for the possibility of negotiating a license for the community to use the lake again. I considered it, but I had a secondary, more satisfying revenge move planned. I agreed to meet with them, but I came with an offer that was less a negotiation and more a final, crushing set of terms. I will grant a full, perpetual public easement for the entire community to use Lake Serenity again, I stated. Under two non-negotiable conditions, I let the silence hang for a moment, letting their hope build. First, the entirety of the existing HOA board and all its committees must be disbanded immediately and reformed under a new, restrictive charter that specifically removes all jurisdiction over waterfront and water activities. You are a landscaping committee and a garbage collection service, nothing more. And second, the HOA must formally and legally agree to buy my boat, the SS Minnow, for the full price of a brand new top-of-the-line luxury pontoon boat, which I shall name the Prudence. And that new boat must be permanently moored at the community dock as a perpetual reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. They looked aghast. A brand new pontoon boat just to replace the cheap aluminum fishing vessel they towed. It was punitive, it was theatrical, and it was the final perfect middle finger. They had no choice. Within a month, the HOA was gutted and reformed. The new luxury pontoon boat, the Prudence, arrived, painted in a defiant, unapproved shade of nautical blue and gleaming under the sun, moored exactly where the HOA had tried to impose its will, in Prudence Featherstone. She sold her house within 6 months and moved out of state. Unable to live with the daily reminder of the lake she tried to control and the boat that became her downfall. I still own the lake, but now I allow the community to use it, not because of a rule, but because I choose to, which is the ultimate satisfying difference. The lake is peaceful, the boat is magnificent, and the tyranny of Prudence is a cautionary tale whispered at every reformed HOA meeting. Justice, it turns out, is a 40-acre lake deed. Can you believe the audacity? She tried to take his boat, and he took her entire lake. That's what we call an epic victory, people. The SS Minnow got the last laugh. What was the most shocking moment for you? Was it the tow truck, the trespass notice, or the final demand for the luxury pontoon boat? Let me know in the comments below.
Ouch!
Don't forget to subscribe for more sweet, sweet homeowner revenge stories. And be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into HOA horror.